Hi everyone, welcome back to Adulting with Micah. I'm so excited about today's episode because I have a friend of mine that is going to sit with us to talk about all things career development, all things career advancement. And as you all know, for our channel, this is going to be the first collaboration. So I just want to say welcome, Krishana.
Thanks, Micah. I'm really excited to be here.
So, Krishana, you have worked in some pretty cool spaces. Would you like to share some of the past jobs that you've been able to work at and the particular role that you did?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've built my career in recruiting and talent, and I've been really fortunate to work at some really fun companies like Sonos, Spotify, Meta. I've also worked in the startup world, and so it's just been a blast, and I feel really fortunate to be exposed to tech. What I will say is a lot of what we'll talk about today are my personal observations and opinions. These are not the policies or principles of any one particular company, but I think I've seen quite a bit.
Nice. But what are some of the things that my subscribers from Adulting with Micah can know based off of your experience and perspective, what a person in talent and recruiting does?
Yeah. So folks that work in talent and recruiting actually do a number of things for a company. It's everything from where I started as a recruiting coordinator, where my responsibility was to make sure that anyone who's coming in for an interview or to explore career opportunities from very junior level all the way through executives really had their questions answered. The logistics behind their visit are all taken care of. I also have spent time doing what they call full desk recruiting. That means coming up with strategies to hunt for the best talent in the market, coming up with outreach campaigns to get people to answer their emails, and say, yeah, I'd like to learn more about this job that you have here. Once doing that, you then get to know the talent in the market. And oftentimes recruiters kind of act as matchmakers, right? Understanding what you want to accomplish in your career and not simply saying, I've got this job, I'm going to fill it because your resume looks aligned with it, but saying, actually, Micah, I've got a job, but it sounds like your interest may be more aligned in this other space. And so playing matchmaker between you and the decision makers around whatever it is that you're interested in the company, that the company actually needs from a talent perspective.
I think that's very important. You know, Krishana and I, we're always going to lean in on our personal experiences. But here on the Adulting with Micah channel, we want to be able to give you some practical advice to just be able to navigate through these uncertain times. And so with that, we have some interview questions for our friend Krishana. How does the average day-to-day worker really become recession resilient, and what are the things that we can think about to really stay competitive in today's job market and economy? And like, what are sort of the things that we should constantly keep thinking about in your role in the talent and recruiting management space so that we can be able to be relevant?
I think it's important to think about preparing for a recession as not being recession proof. Like, my career navigation is one critical example of how you cannot avoid where there are going to be cuts or impact. And so I think the best thing you can do is prepare for it so you can bounce back and be better after that. And so I think really being clear on what you want is super important, right? There is not one way to be recession resilient that's going to work for everybody. You've got to determine what your values are, what your priorities are, long-term and short-term goals, in order to decide what actions you can take today to make sure that your train keeps moving in the direction you want it to go. And so I think thinking about internal mobility, like if you want to stay at your company, you think that there's value in that, figure out what options exist inside your company. Figure out who you know, go talk to them. If you would rather change industries and do something that maybe you think will be less impacted by the recession, start to research, right? Put on your LinkedIn that you're open to be hired or you're looking for a job. A lot of people don't realize that those filters, there are filters that recruiters can see that your coworkers and your boss cannot see. So signal to the world that I'm open to something, although you're happily in your role. I think really being clear on the outcomes that you want to drive for yourself is super important so that you're not jumping ship too soon and assuming that you're going to be impacted where you might not have, or hanging on thinking, well, I've been here a long time, so I'm not going to be impacted by these cuts. Oftentimes, layoffs, it's not personal. I've been laid off a few times, and At the time, it's really jarring, but what you learn is that you can navigate and use that as an opportunity to network, right? You get a lot of empathy from your colleagues who maybe were not impacted. They're a little bit, for folks that have worked with you, they're willing to introduce you to their network. And so really start to be clear on what you want, because it'll be really important for you to articulate to the people that are surrounding you and wanting to lift you up. Here's what I'm looking for. Here's what I've done. And here's the ask from you, right? Here's the ask that I want from your network that can help me move in that direction. So just clarity, a willingness to follow up and reach out to your network, and just preparedness to do it.
Yeah. How does one navigate that space where you have great benefits, great, like a cushion, but the work you're doing is just not interesting anymore, or it's no longer just kind of providing that impact?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think, there are great companies out there that you're like, I want to be here for the long term, but I got to be doing something that means something to me.
I need to grow.
Yeah. And I think that can be true for a number of reasons. It could be where the company is. It could be, what the path you're on is, whatever. I think that internal mobility is a really underutilized resource that most companies have. So most companies, when they hire you, they really do want to invest in you for the long term. Maybe it's in the role you started in, maybe it's not. And so I think when you find yourself in that position where you're like, I'd like to be here, but this team is not working for me, start to really approach it as an internal job search using a lot of the same habits you might with an outside company. And so there's usually an internal job board at a company. Go look at what positions or projects are available. Go as far as looking up who the hiring managers are or the recruiting team that's working on it, and go talk to them, right? Ask explicit questions. Unlike an external job search, you actually have access to the individuals who are going to make a decision in the end on that particular job. So go learn. I think one of the best habits I've learned in the 10 years that I've been in recruiting is setting up coffee chats, right? Whether it's for a job that I have in mind, or if I just have my eye on a company. This was very true as I navigated my career. I'm like, oh, this company's great, but I wonder what that company's like. And so what you might do is, while you're there, set up a coffee chat with someone and say, hey, looks like your team's got an opening, or maybe it's someone who comes from a similar background as you. Looks, I know you started your career here, and now I've seen you progress within this company. Talk to me about how you did that. What does success look like? What resources are available for someone who wants to continue to grow here? I think the other thing that's really pertinent at this point in time is, in times of uncertainty, take a look at where your company's priorities are. There may be teams that are looking for your skill set that are like not at risk of being cut because it's going to remain a company priority even through economic uncertain times. And so really continue to keep your eye on internal opportunities, whether it's for personal reasons and satisfaction, or if you're like planning your life, trying to plan a future, as we talk a lot about, you want to know that you're going to be working on a company priority, and you may not wake up tomorrow to, unfortunately, we've had layoffs and you've been impacted.
Right. And it's like, I just had a baby, and right now there's like talks of recession, which is really scary. And like, there's a piece of me that's like, oh my gosh, like I have to pay for daycare, I have a mortgage, and all the things that it requires to just be productive and contributing to my household. And like, the idea of career development and advancement is something that is very real. And I always feel like I want to be able to be tapped into knowing like, okay, is this particular department going to be shut down because, hey, we have to downsize and this team is no longer contributing. And so I always personally want to know like, what are some of the things that I can think about to keep myself marketable, but also too, how do I meet the company's interest, but my own personal interest in being able to have the two worlds to intersect. And so it does sound like there could be some middle ground, but it does require for me to have to do more research and being cognizant of the current job climate and what's happening.
Yeah. To hold yourself accountable, set up one monthly or maybe quarterly coffee chat. In good times, whether you're looking to make a change or not, find one person internally that you're like, you know what, you've either been in a position that I'm interested in, you've navigated in a way that I'm curious about, and say, can I grab 15 minutes on your calendar? The best thing that I think came out of our period of being stuck in the house is virtual meetings became pretty normalized. And so if you can't go grab coffee physically in person, ask someone if you can set up 15 minutes to grab time on their calendar, come prepared with questions that you're curious about, and learn about what's happening across your company.
There have been times in my career where I have historically, and I still am, I'm the worker bee. Like, you give me a job,
You're gonna get it done. I
10
know that
things,
about you, Micah.
I will do it. I'm an executor.
Well.
When people are asking, like, what are your top 5 Myers-Briggs strengths? I'm like, leadership, execution, communication, and all the great things, because things will get done. But there have been some serious times where I feel like, hey, if there's an opportunity for me to promote, if there's an opportunity for me to really take my skill sets and go to another level, I have been challenged with, actually, you're not ready. You know what?
Yeah.
You're really great at this role. So we thought that this person externally is better at it than you. And it would leave me feeling confused, upset, but really frustrated because I don't really understand the difference between me being a worker bee and actually delivering on something versus kind of like what the larger company needs. And in today's job market and its uncertainty and talks of just potential like recessions, like I really want to be recession resilient and really try and put on my like executive level leadership cap. But sometimes I never really know what they're looking for because, hey, I'm doing the job that you asked me to do. And I know that my talents and my skill sets will allow me to do well in a manager or leadership role. But there seems to be a disconnect between me being able to execute and the feedback that I've actually personally gotten in one particular job role is the lack of strategic thinking. Is there a way that you can explain to me what those two mean and how they intersect? Because I left frustrated and ready to go.
Yeah, it can be a really frustrating conversation because I think, the implicit assumption that I think a lot of us are working with is that career navigation is linear, right? So here's your set of tasks, do them and do them well, and you move on. It's like Super Mario. Then you get to the next world, right? Now you're doing this. You got the mushroom, you're going up, you got bigger. That's actually not how career navigation works. When you think about the talent needs of a company, sometimes it's a bit more like you start here, execution is the most important thing, you do that well, and then you have to learn how to multiply the outputs of that execution, which usually is not taking on more individual tasks. It's thinking about how we achieve more of an outcome with the same or less input, right? And so that's where strategic thinking comes in. It's like, how do I exponentially grow what I was able to do as an individual and then share that with a team, right? Or share that across teams even. And so I think what's really important is to continuously ask for explicit, actionable feedback. And so one of the things that's interesting is that in navigating your career, you have to have a really good relationship with feedback and not just take the you did a good job. It's like, yes, I crushed it. I'm so excited. But ask a clarifying question. If someone says, Micah, you crushed that, say, oh, thank you. Tell me what worked really well. And if there were anything, if there was anything I could do differently, even when I've succeeded, what would that look like? So they can start to give you feedback around the specifics. Maybe it was how you delivered some data. Maybe it was the timely notifications prior to a meeting to say, we're gonna be discussing this. I want everyone to give it some thought before we're in the room together. Ask specific questions about what went well. And similarly, if you're getting some negative feedback like that didn't go well or you need some help, take that and say, okay, give me a specific example of how I might have navigated a portion of this differently. What does this look like if it were to be more strategic than what I've already delivered? I think sometimes we make feedback just so black and white, like I did it, check, or I didn't do it, X. And it's not that. Sometimes the real feedback is like somewhere between an accomplishment and a non-accomplishment. You just need to know exactly what worked well so you can do more of that, and exactly what didn't go well so you can try something different.
Yeah. I definitely think that this was very great perspective to think about, and I hope my listeners on Adulting with Micah thought this information was beneficial as well. If you are trying to navigate your career, please be sure to let us know in the comments down below. And where can the people find you, Krishana?
Sure. I haven't set up anything major yet, but if you have career questions, I'm always happy to offer my advice. My email is at Krishana, Krishana.R.Hall
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us today, and we'll see you on our next episode. Take care.